What's going on, everyone? You are welcome to Web Chrony Online. In this tutorial, you will learn how to manipulate HTML elements with JavaScript. If you have followed this channel for a while now, you know that JavaScript is a programming language that allows you to add interactivity and dynamic content to web pages. In this tutorial, we will add JavaScript to HTML. We will access HTML elements in JavaScript. We will change properties of HTML elements. We will add and remove attributes of HTML elements, and finally we will listen to events in JavaScript. After this tutorial, you will have a basic understanding of how to manipulate HTML elements with JavaScript. So without any further ado, let the tutorial begin. But before we do that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel before you continue, and if you haven't, make sure to click on the subscribe button to do so now. With that being said, let the tutorial begin. Okay guys, so I'll begin by creating an empty folder here. You can go ahead and call your folder any name of your choice, but for me I'll call it HTML and JavaScript. Now that my folder has been created successfully, I will right click on this folder and then select open with code so that it will be open in the Visual Studio Code. Now that my HTML and JavaScript folder has been successfully opened in the Visual Studio Code, I will go ahead and create my index.html file. So I will click on this icon here and then call this index.html and hit enter for the HTML file to be created. Now that my HTML file has been created successfully, I'll go ahead and type the exclamation mark. Make sure the Emmet abbreviation is on, and I'll press enter for all these templates to be pre-populated into my HTML file for me. The first course of action is to change the title. Even though that is not our major concern, I think it is always a good idea to give your web page a title. So I'll call this one HTML and JS. This should be okay. I will first of all create an element, but this element that I'm going to create will be a button. So I'll create a button right here, and I will give a text which says click me, like this. Okay, now that the click me button has been created successfully, I think it is time for us to launch our HTML file and view our result in the browser. So I'll move my cursor to the go live here and click to open the file in a browser to see what we are doing so far. Okay, so my HTML and JS file has been created successfully, and I have the button created here for me. Coming up is how to include JavaScript in HTML. Don't go away. Okay guys, so there are three ways of adding JavaScript to an HTML file. The first one is to include it in the opening tag of the element you wish to perform a specific function on. So for example, I have this button element right here. If I want to include a script in it, I can just go to the opening tag of this button element and then go ahead and type in my JavaScript function, and it will work just fine. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to listen to a particular event. There are so many events you can perform on a button, but one of them is a click event. And the way we have a click event on a button is to use the onClick like this, and whatever function I will write inside the code will be executed once I click the button. So at the moment, what I want to do is that when the button is clicked, I want to send an alert, or there should be a pop-up which says I have been clicked. So this is how we do it. You type the alert, bring a bracket, and inside the bracket I'll bring a quote, and then I'll type I have been clicked, like this. Okay, so now let's go back to our browser and let's click and see what happens. So I click like this, and then I get the alert which says I have been clicked. Okay, so I click OK, then I click again, then it shows I have been clicked. Okay, so the first way of adding a JavaScript to an HTML element is to type the code directly inside the opening tag of the element. Coming up is the second way of adding JavaScript to an HTML file. Don't go away. Okay guys, so the second way of adding JavaScript to an HTML element is to create a script element inside the HTML file. This script element can appear in the head element or the body element. If you wish to have your script element in the body element, it should be the last element inside the body tag immediately before the closing body tag. So look at what is going to happen here. I will type script here and then hit enter for the script element to be opened. Any function that I will declare inside this script, as far as I am able to reference it inside the HTML element, it will be executed successfully. So let's create this function and then reference it in the button element. So I'll create a function and then I'll call this function click me. And what I want this function to do is that I want it to send an alert that says I have been clicked from a script tag in the body element. Okay, so let me make the corrections right here. And what I need to do is that where there is the onClick event, I will type the name of the function and invoke it. So all I need to do is to type the click me here, which is the function that I want to invoke once the button has been clicked. But let's take a look at something now that I have just typed the name of this function in the onClick event. So when I come back to the browser and I click, nothing happens, and the reason is that though I have referenced the name of this function here, but it has not been invoked. If we wish to invoke this function, then we have to bring a parenthesis like this. So now that I have brought a parenthesis, it means that when I click on this button, the click me function will be invoked and the alert will be displayed. So I will save this work and then get back to the browser, and once I click like this, the alert pops up and says I have been clicked from a script tag in the body element. Okay, now let's also look at when we have it in the head element. So I'll just cut everything from here and paste it inside the head tag, and this time around I will say head element. Okay, you will maintain the name, everything will be intact except that I change this text. Okay, so let's take a look at what will happen now. So I come here, I click on it, and it says I have been clicked from a script tag in the head element. So guys, this is the second way of including a JavaScript in an HTML. Coming up is the last and final way of including JavaScript in an HTML. Don't go away. Okay guys, so the last and final way of including JavaScript in an HTML file is to create a separate JavaScript file, put all your JavaScript code in there, and then link it inside the HTML file, and then reference the functions at the areas where you want them to be called once you interact with the web element. Okay, so with that being said, I will come here and create a new JavaScript file. I'll call this file index as usual, and the extension for a JavaScript file is .js like this. So once I hit enter, the JavaScript file has been created successfully. What I need to do is to link the JavaScript file in this index.html file, and I can go ahead and use it. Again, you can link the JavaScript file in the head element or the body element. If you wish to link it in the body element, you should make sure that it is the last element in the body tag, and it should appear immediately before the closing body tag. So what I'm going to do is that I'll comment this one out, and at the last part of the body element, immediately before the closing body tag, I will create a script element like this, and instead of typing the script in between the tags, I will move my cursor to the opening JavaScript tag, and then I will type an attribute called src. Now this is where I will link the JavaScript file to my HTML file. So I will hit on the period or full stop followed by a / and then select my index.js file. So what I'm going to do is that I already have the click me function over here that to be invoked once I click on this button. I have to create this function inside the index.js file. So I will create my function and call it click me like this, and then what I want to do is that I will send an alert which says I have been clicked from a separate JS file in the body tag or element, whichever way. Okay, so now the function has been created successfully. If I open the result in the browser and then click it, then the alert will pop up and then the text will say I have been clicked from a separate JS file in the body tag. Okay, I can also come back here, and instead of referencing it in the body tag, I will hold Alt followed by the top arrow to move this inside the head element of the HTML file. And let me come here and make some adjustment and say head tag like this. And when I come here and click on the click me button, it will display the alert which says I have been clicked from a separate JS file in the head tag. Coming up next is how to access HTML element in JavaScript. Don't go away. Okay guys, so at this point we are going to access HTML element in JavaScript, and to do that I want to create a couple of new elements in my HTML file. So the first element that I want to create will be an h1 element. I will give it a class name of title, and inside the h1 elements I will generate some random text of about 5 words. Okay, I'll go ahead and create another element which will be a paragraph, and I'll give it a class name of paragraph. And inside this paragraph I'll have my lorem, and I'll give it about 20 words like this. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that an HTML element can be accessed in JavaScript. We shall take our time and look at each one of them, and afterwards you will decide for yourself which one is best for you. So coming up right now. Okay guys, so at this point I think it will be a good idea to split the screen into two. So the first thing I will do is to collapse this side menu, click on the index.js and then split it into two. I can go ahead and collapse and close this one, and then we will work from here. So the first thing that we are going to take a look at is trying to access the HTML element based on their tag name. Okay, so I'll create a new variable called h1, and what I'm going to do is that I want to assign all the elements with the tag name h1 to this h1 element. Afterwards I will log it into the console and we will take a look at the result. And this is how we do it. We type the keyword document followed by the method which says get element by tag name. This is it right here. Okay, so because it is a method, it should be followed by a parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis I'll bring a quote, and inside the quote I'll type the tag I am looking for. And because we are looking for h1, I will just type the h1 over here. Now let's log this h1 variable that has been created here into the console and pay attention to what will be brought. Okay, so I will say console.log into bracket h1. Okay, I'll save this work, open the file or the browser, and we cannot see anything here because we are logging this to the console, and we have to open the console in order to see what we are looking for. So I'll get back to the browser, I will right click here and select inspect. Once I select the inspect, I can go ahead and click on the console to get the console. Now as you can see, we have the index.js line 6, and that is because we are logging on the line 6 of our index.js. So when I come here, you can see that we have HTML collection and there is a bracket with the digit 1. When I click to expand it, you see that we have an h1 element with title as its class name. Okay, now let me create another h1 element right here. So I'll come here and create another h1, and this one will have a class name of subtitle. I just want to show you something. And this will also have the lorem. I'll just generate about 7 words inside it. And when we get back here, we have an array here. So once I click it like this, we have the first one which has the title as its class name, and the second one with subtitle as its class name. Okay, so let's get back to the code and I'll explain a couple of things to you. Now this one says that we should search the document, which is this whole thing right here, and we should find all the elements by their tag name. And because we are using h1, every element which has the h1 as a tag will be collected and assigned to this h1. So what this means is that it will return an array, and if I want to perform a specific function to it, I have to access them based on their index. Okay, coming up is the second way of accessing HTML element in JavaScript. Don't go away. Okay guys, so we are moving on to the second way of accessing HTML element, and this time around we are going to access the element based on their class name. So I'll create a new variable here called title, and I'll assign it to, I'll bring the document keyword followed by my period, then I'll say get element by class name, as you can see right here. As usual, because it is a method, I'll bring a parenthesis followed by a quote, and inside the quote I'll type the class name that I want to assign to this title variable. So as you can see, this h1 element has a class name of title. So when I come here and type the title and then log the title variable into the console, let's see what will be logged into the console. So I come back to the browser, and as you can see, we have the HTML collection, and once I click it, there is one h1 element with the class name title. Now let me create another element. This time around it will be a span. So I'll create a span and I will give it a class name of title, and inside this span I will generate a random text of about 10 words. And once I come back to the browser and then wait for it to refresh, when I click on it, there are two elements with the class name title. One is an h1 element and the second one is a span. Okay, great. So that is the second way of accessing HTML element in JavaScript. Coming up is the third way of accessing HTML element. Don't go away. Okay guys, so the third way of accessing element in JavaScript is to access them based on their ID. Now it is important to know that an ID should be unique. What this means is that when we access an element based on its ID, we only get just one element. So let me come down here and create an h4 element and give it some random text of about 8 words, and inside the opening tag of this h4 element I will give an attribute of ID, and I will give this ID as title 1. Okay, like this. Now inside my index.js file I will create a new variable called title ID, something like this, and as usual we will bring our document dot get element, this time around by ID, which is the first one. Okay, of course it is a method, so we bring a parenthesis, and inside this parenthesis I will type the ID that has been given to this element. So I will type title -1. I just have to do the correction right here, so I'll type here the T so that everything will be intact. And this time around, instead of logging title, I will log ID. Okay, now I will save this code and then come back to the browser and let's see what happens. Please pay attention to what is going to happen here. It is very important. We receive null, and the reason why we receive null is because we have linked our JavaScript file in the head tag. And this is what it means. When the browser is passing this HTML file, it starts from the top to the bottom. What it means is that if it will take time to print, the button will be printed first, followed by the H1, followed by the P tag, followed by the H1 that comes, the span, and then the H4. Now, because we have the script tag inside the head tag, the JavaScript file will be passed before the elements are created, and this is why it is unable to access this H4 element with ID title1. So there are two ways to remedy this situation. The first way is, instead of linking this JavaScript file in the head element, we should rather link it in the body element. So I'll just copy it from the top and bring it here and paste it right here. Now when I come back to the browser and then wait for it to load, you see that the H4 element has been logged into the console, and when I click here, you see every information about this particular element. Okay, this is an evidence that the H4 element with ID title1 has been printed successfully into the console. Okay, now if we still wish to have the script tag in the head tag, then there is a way around things, and let's do just that. So I'll comment out this one, I'll come back to the head element and uncomment this one out, and then what I will do is that everything that we will do here should come inside a particular function. There's a JavaScript event called onload, and this onload means that every function that will be assigned to this event will only be triggered after the web page has been fully loaded. So I'll just cut everything from here, and the way we do that is to bring the window keyword followed by a dot, then we bring in the event which is onload, like this. Now this onload will be assigned to a function, and the function can be created later. So I'll call this function load page, like this. Okay, and then save. Now I'll create this load page function, and then we can go ahead and run our JavaScript without any problem. So I'll create a function called load page, like this, and I'll bring my parentheses and I'll paste everything inside of it. Okay, so now when I come back here and refresh, then the H4 element has been printed successfully. Is that okay? So if in case you still want to have the script tag inside the head element, then we should have an onload function, which means that the function can be emitted after the page has been fully loaded. Okay guys, so we move on to the next method of accessing HTML element in JavaScript, and we have the query selector and query selector all. So let's take a look at each one of them, and then we will see how best we can use it to access HTML element in JavaScript. So I'll create a new variable called query, and I will bring the document as usual, followed by a period, and I'll say query selector. So inside this query selector, I can access the element based on the tag, the class, the ID, and what have you. Okay, so for example, if I want to access all the elements based on their tag name, I will just type the tag name here and it will work just fine for me. So now let me log this here, and then let's see the result we obtain. Great. As you can see, we have an h1 element with the class name title logged into the console, and the reason is that this query selector here will select the first element which matches the input that we gave inside the parentheses. Okay, but if I want to select all of them, then I have to add the all to a, so that it will be query selector all. So now that I have brought the query selector all, let's take a look at what happens here. So as you can see, we have a node list with two elements in it. The first one is the h1 with title as its class name, and the second one is another h1 with subtitle as its class name. If I click on this arrow to open it, you can see them right here. Okay, so we have the h1 title, h1 subtitle. So that is how we use the query selector to select or access element in HTML based on their tag name. Now if I want to access the element based on their class name, then I will bring a period followed by the name of the class. So for example, I can say title, and don't forget that we have an h1 element here with the class name title, and we also have a span here with the class name title. So when we bring the selector or, it will select these two elements. So let's see for ourselves in the console. So as you can see, we have the node list with two elements in it. The first one is the h1 with the class name title, and the second one is the span with the class name title. If I go ahead and clear the all and then leave only the query selector, then it will select only the first element. So as you can see, the first element has been created here successfully. Is that okay? Cool. Now in case you want to access the element using the query selector based on the ID, then we use the hash. Okay, so we type the hash followed by the value for the ID. So for example, I type here title 1 and then save. When I come here, you see that the h4 with ID title 1 has been logged into the console successfully. Okay, so coming up is when we use the query selector or tag name and then the class name. How do we access the individual element? Don't go away. Okay guys, so at this point we are going to take a look at how to access the individual element when we use tag name or class name or query selector or. If you remember, when we were treating JavaScript methods on array, we said that each element of an array can be accessed using its index. And if you also remember, we said that in JavaScript the indexing starts from 0. What this means is that the first element of an array has the index of 0, the second one has an index of 1, the third one has an index of 2, and it goes on like that. Okay, so for example, when we take a look at the query, when I bring the query selector or, and instead of getting the one with ID, I should rather get the h1 element because there are two of them. If I want to access the first one, it's just a matter of breaking the square bracket and putting the index inside. So for example, if I want the first one, it has an index of 0. So when I type 0 inside and save this code, when I go to the browser, the first h1 element is now selected and it has the class name title. let me get back here, and instead of 1 I will 0, I will bring in 1. Now let's see. Now you see that the h1 element with the class name subtitle has been displayed because this is the second h1 element in our HTML file or inside our web page. Okay, great. So that is how we access individual element when we use the selector or the class name or the tag name. Now what do you think will happen if I bring in something that does not exist? For example, this one has only 2 h1 elements in it, which means that the index for the last element is 1. So what if I bring something like 2 and then open the console? What do you think will occur before I show it to you? Let me know it in the comment section. Okay, so I come here and you see that we have undefined because truly we don't have a third h1 element in our HTML web page. Is that okay? Alright, so coming up is how to create new element. Don't go away. Okay guys, so we will take a look at how to create a new element in HTML in a bit, but at this point I think it is important for us to learn how to access the content of an HTML element and also change it before we create a new one. So let's get started. For instance, I have a query here and the query is selecting the first one like this. If I want, I can check the text inside this h1 element which has been assigned to the query variable. So when I say console.log into brackets query .inner HTML, let's see what will be logged to us in the console. So the inner HTML will print the whole element for us. Okay, but at this point I want us to only target the text. So instead of inner HTML, we should rather try inner text like this, and let's take a look at it. When I come back here this time around, it's only the text inside the h1 element that has been printed for us. Okay, and now that we are able to have access to this text, we can change it. Okay, so for example, I can come here and say query .inner text and then assign it to I have been changed in a JavaScript file like this. Let's save like this and then come back here and let's look at it, and boom, we have it right here. I have been changed in a JavaScript file. Before then it was lorem something something, and now it has been changed. Okay, now we can also change the HTML itself. As you can see, this is an h1 element and here we have only changed the text. Okay, so instead of changing the text, I'll comment this one out, and this time around change the HTML itself, or the tag or the element of the tag of the element itself. So let's take a look at this. I'll just call the query .inner HTML and assign it to an italic, which is an I, and I'll say I have been changed by an inner HTML property, something like that. Okay, you can go ahead and type anything of your choice. I'll just close it like this and then save this work. Okay, so let's preview it from the browser and you'll see that the h1 element has now been italicized because we have set it to an italic tag. Is that okay? So the inner HTML fetches the entire element with the tag and the text in it, whilst the inner text targets only the text. Okay, so coming up is how to create an element in JavaScript. Don't go away. Okay guys, so we are going to create a link element or an anchor tag inside the JavaScript, and we want it to display on the web page. Okay, so let's go ahead and declare a variable called link, and then we will type document followed by the method which says create element. So I'll select this one and then bring a parenthesis. Inside a quote in the parenthesis, I can give the tag of the element I wish to create. And because I want to create a link element, I have to give it an anchor tag. So I'll just type the A like this. Now this element has been created successfully, except that it doesn't have any text. So how do we add a text to this element? If you guess that we can use the inner text or inner HTML, then your guess is accurate. So let's do just that. I'll type in here link, bring my period followed by the inner text. You can of course use the inner HTML, whichever one you prefer. Inner text, and I'll say this is a link tag created by JavaScript. Okay, great. Now this link has been created and it also has an inner text, but how do we make it display on the browser? Because right now if I show you, it doesn't appear here. Okay, I think now I can just close this one and then show the full screen browser. It doesn't show here, and we have to find a way to make it come. And how we do it is to join it. And in JavaScript there is a method called append or append child. There are two of them, either of them work just fine. So what we will do is that I'll declare a variable called body, and then I'll select this body element, and afterwards I'll call the body element and now append this link element to it. So let's do just that. I'll create a variable called body, and then I will assign it to document.query selector, and what I want is the body. Okay, so now that the body has been selected, I can just call the body like this, bring my period or full stop, and then say append. As you can see, we have the append and append child. Okay, so we can select the append, and then inside a bracket we will bring in the new element that has been created that we wish to add to the already existing element in the body element. So the name is link like this. I just save like this, and when I check from here, we can see that we have this is a link tag created by JavaScript. But as you can see, this doesn't look like a link, because a regular HTML link will appear in blue, it will be underlined, and it should also have a navigation link, and that is exactly what we are going to do in the next episode. Don't go away. Okay guys, so at this point we are going to take a look at how to include attribute or to set attribute for HTML element, and this is what we are going to do in order to make our link that has been created to appear like a link. Okay, so to do that, I will come down here and then I'll call the link element, which is the element we have created in the JavaScript. Okay, there is this method called set attribute. Okay, inside the set attribute, which is a method, and for that there should be a parenthesis, it takes two variables. The first one will be the name of the attribute we wish to set, and the second one will be the value for the attribute. So for example, an anchor tag should have an href. Okay, an href attribute, and here we will say /about, something like this. Okay, and now when I open the HTML file, let's refresh. and now we have this is a link tag created by JavaScript, and when you look at the left bottom corner, you will see that the link has been created successfully. Okay, so we use the set attribute method to add attribute to a particular element. Okay, so we can also add more. For example, I can just call link like this, and then I will say set attribute, and inside a bracket I will give it a class attribute, and I will give it a class name of HTML-link like this, and save. Now let's preview this code and see what is happening. So we have this thing right here. I will right click this particular element, select the inspect, and now you can see that we have this anchor tag created right here. It has the href with the navigation link /about, and it has a class name which says HTML-link like this. Is that okay? Now your assignment is to create an image using JavaScript, give it an src, and also give it an alt. Let's find out whether you understand what we are doing here. No worries, I will also do it in the next episode, and until then, let's see how well you are following along. Don't go away. Okay guys, so how did the assignment go? I hope you were able to do it. Now let's do it together. Now I have added a new file which is an img.jpg. So let me just preview it here. This is a code that is very funny. Albert Einstein didn't say this. He says the more CSS I learn, the more I realize how much CSS I don't know. So let's take a look at how we can create an image element and then give this particular image as its src. So let's do just that. I'll come here and then create a new variable called image, and then I'll set it to document.createElement, and into bracket I'll create an img like this. Now that this img has been created, I'll call the image, and then I'll set attribute, and the first attribute that I'm going to set will be alt, and the value for this alt will be funny. Some of them just give something funny. Okay, then also I'll create attribute, so I'll say set attribute, and this attribute will be src, and this src will be .img.jpg. okay, now in case this img.jpg is in the folder, we should also reference it accordingly. Okay, so now that it has been created successfully, the next thing to do is to append it to the body element. So I'll call the body.append, and into bracket I will append the image right here like this. So now let's open our browser and see what is happening. Okay, now we have the image created here. Unfortunately, we were unable to reference it correctly, and let's find out what is happening here. Let's remove this one and maybe this one too, and see whether it will come. Still it didn't come. I didn't reference it well. Okay, still it didn't come. Let's see. Let me come back here. Let's look at the image. The image is a neighbor of this. It's jpg. Now let's see. jpg img.jpg./ it should have worked just fine. Oh, what's going on? Let me try this one. Okay, still it didn't work. Now let me just find some from the internet, and maybe that will be very okay for us. Or let me just copy path here, and then paste right here. Oops, I'll just paste it here. Now let's see if it will work. Still it didn't work. This thing should have worked anyway. I don't know. Oh, it should be src, not sorry guys, it should be src like this, and then I should have the img.jpg. I'm sorry guys. And now ta-da, the image has been printed successfully, and look at it right here. Okay, so we can go ahead and use the set attribute to add some more attribute to it, and everything will be all right. Okay, so yeah, that is it. Now let's also take a look at how to remove attribute from an HTML element. That is what we are going to do in the next one. Don't go away. Okay guys, so we are moving on to how to remove element. We have learned how to set element. We want to remove element. So the one that we are going to work on will be the query. Okay, we have changed the query to I have been changed by an inner HTML property. Let's see if we still have it right there. Okay, cool, we have it right here. Okay, so let's look at something here, which is the second h1 element. Second h1 element is here. It has a class name of subtitle. I want us to remove this class from it. Okay, so down here I will select the query, and then I will set remove attribute. Okay, and the attribute that I want to remove is the class, and the value that I want to remove is called subtitle. Okay, so when I save like this and then come back here, when I right click on this element and select inspect, you see that the h1 element here has no class name. The class name has been removed. Okay, let me comment out what we just did and see what I'm talking about. So I'll comment this one out and come back here, and you will see that this particular element has a class name of subtitle. Okay, it has a class name of subtitle. If I come back here and then uncomment this one out, and then we check, you see that the class name has been removed successfully. So we use set attribute to add an attribute, remove attribute to remove an attribute. Is that okay? Great. Now we are going to take a look at how to remove a child from the body element coming up. Okay guys, so at the moment we have learned how to create a new element and append it to the body. In this part we are going to remove a particular element from the body, and the one that I want us to remove will be the query. So let's take a look at the query. It has this I have been changed by an inner HTML property, and let's see if it is printed right here. Of course it has been printed right here. So what I can do is that I'll come here, I'll call the body element, bring my full stop, and I'll say remove child like this, followed by a parenthesis and the name of the child that I wish to remove. So here we call it query like this, and then I will save. And when I open like this, there I have been changed by an HTML blah 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 has been removed from the web page. So we use the create element coupled with set attribute and append or append child to add a new element to an HTML page, and we use the remove child to remove an HTML element from a web page. Now we move on to the last session of this tutorial, which is listening to events in JavaScript. Don't go away. Okay guys, so we have already listened to an event, which is the onClick event we had with the button element, we are going to take a look at a different way of listening to event using the event listener. Okay, so what I'll do is that I will fetch the button from this HTML element, and afterwards I will add an event listener which will be triggered when the event happens. So let's do that. I'll create a variable called button, and then I will call the document dot query selector, and I'll select the button right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add an event listener. So I'll call the button right here and then bring a full stop and then bring a method called add event listener. This is it. Now because it is a method, we will have a parenthesis, and this method takes two parameters. The first parameter is the event we wish to listen to, and the second parameter is the function we wish to call once the event is triggered. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll bring a quote and I will say click. Okay, so the event that I want to listen is click. Then I'll bring a comma, and I can either declare the function directly here, or I can just give it a name and then declare the function outside. So let me just declare the function directly. Afterwards we will also declare the function outside and just call it name. Okay, so I'll just create my function like this, and inside this function what I want to do is to alert, which says I have been triggered by an event listener. Okay, like this. I'll save this right here, and of course the function should be called, okay, or it should be invoked, and because of that I will bring a parenthesis right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and get rid of this thing. We don't need it, like this, and then see. Now pay attention here. Now the the function has been invoked even before we clicked it, and the reason is that we brought this parenthesis here. Okay, if we don't want anything of that sort to happen, we should just remove this parenthesis. Okay, and now this function will only be triggered when the button has been clicked. So let me just close the console, and once I click on the button, the event will be triggered, and the alert will just show like that. Okay, cool. Now let's take a look at it again. We call the button using the query selector. We add an event listener. The event we are listening to is a click event, and this is a function we will call. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that instead of declaring the function directly here, I should just use a function name and then declare the function outside. So I'll call this function call me, like this. Okay, and outside of the event listener I'll create a function. We can use the arrow function or the regular function, whichever way you prefer, it will work just fine. So I'll use the regular function. Now let's do this. So I'll just bring in the function keyword followed by the call me, which is the function name we have given to call once there is a click event on this button. Okay, followed by a parenthesis. I will say alert. Inside this bracket I will say I have been triggered by an event listener in a regular function, like this. Okay, so now let's check what we have done so far. Once I come here and click it, the event has been triggered. So this is how we listen to an event in JavaScript. Okay, so you can go ahead, take your time and go through the code once again and practice, because practice makes permanent and perfect practice makes a man perfect. Okay guys, so this is where we end it all for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, kindly leave a like on this video. If you are not subscribed, click on the subscribe button to do so now. I have the link to my WhatsApp group in the description of this video. Go check it out and join this page, because that is where I share links to my resources and also offer personalized assistance to people who need my help. Okay, so I'll see you once again with another tutorial. Until then, peace out.